This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, my name is Jane Hines, and I am an assessor here at the Lighthouse Group. Today I will be taking you through the assessment book for Introduction to Leadership. This will ensure that you understand what is required of you to complete the assignment. We will now look at the first question. The first question asks, outline the governance of different types of organisation. Always read the blue writing that's underneath each question, because this will certainly help you. For this question, you need to outline the governance requirements for 3 different types of organisations you are familiar with, focusing on how they make decisions and define accountability. For example, with a sole trader, this is relatively simple, as everything falls to one accountable person. However, with a larger company or local authority, this is more complex. Please use examples where possible to support your explanation. What are we looking for here? We have 2 columns. In the first column, put your organisation types. 3 examples. My advice is to go to your own organisation and put that type here. So who do you work for? Do you work for the public sector or the private sector? Do you work for a public limited company or a franchise or a partnership? Or maybe a charity, the voluntary sector or the third sector? And then go and put 2 more examples in here. Choose organisations that you are familiar with. Perhaps think about those organisations that you work with within your own organisation. Do you have contractors coming in? What sort of organisations are they? In here, you need to be writing your explanation. What are we asking of you here? Please explore how each type is governed, how are the decisions made, and who makes these decisions. Is it a board of directors or a CEO, or shareholders maybe? Put your explanation in here, and please use examples where possible to support your explanation. Contextualize your answer by looking to your own organisation. This will show the CMI that you're applying your learning back into working practice. We'll now move on to the next question. The next question asks, explain the factors which influence an organisation's culture. Culture is often described as how we do things around here, and this is influenced by many factors. For example, a tech organisation would likely have a very different culture to a charity organisation. Think about the organisation you work in. How would you describe the culture and what contributes to this? My advice would be to start your question with a bit of narrative around what you believe culture in an organisation means. Look to your own organisation to help you with this. You could do some research maybe, perhaps look on Management Direct and look at the cultural web. This may have been discussed in your workshop. Once you've done that, look at 4 to 5 factors which influence an organisation's culture. These could range from anything like the leadership, the owners or the governance. Perhaps it's the people themselves. Is it the customers? Is it the history of the organization? And where does that culture come from? Does it come from the mission of the company? Does it come from the type of work that the company does? A creative company will have a very different culture to a company that maybe handles high-tech chemicals, for instance. And what about those people that are looking into an organization? If they are looking at the website, maybe it's the NHS's website, for instance, and there's a symbol of a stethoscope. A symbol of a stethoscope could mean something very different to a customer or a service user looking at that website to that of somebody who actually works within the organization. Somebody wearing a stethoscope might mean something completely different. Symbols, role models, look at those. And as we said before, explore the culture in your own organization. Lots of things for you to consider there. We'll now move on to the next question. The next question asks, explain the purpose of organizational mission, vision, and value statements. The most successful organizations typically have a well-defined vision, mission, statement, and values. Why is this? You may like to think of personal examples of an organization which did this well versus one which didn't. So a good place to start here, of course, is with your own organization's mission, vision, and value statement. And then explain the purpose of it. Clearly define each different area. Look at the mission. What is a mission statement? Normally it's something that's more specific. For instance, a great example would be about putting man on the moon, for instance. And what is a vision statement? Well, that's normally about the future, where you want to be. It's about being aspirational. It's big, open-ended. A great example would be NASA's vision statement of wanting to conquer space. And the value statements. Most organizations have a defined set of values, and they normally say, well, that's how we are going to be able to do this, by following these values. Link this all back to the type of organization it is. Look to your own organization. Look to an organization that you think does this really well, and maybe an organization that doesn't do this well. It's all about the brand. Lots of things for you to consider there. We'll now move on to the next question. Outline the purpose of organizational strategies. The best organizations spend a lot of time and effort developing organizational strategies. Why is this? What impact does this have on the success of an organization versus one with no strategy? My advice again is to start your answer with a bit of narrative about what you believe an organizational strategy is. Look to your own organization. And what is the purpose of this organizational strategy? Is it about implementing the goals? Is it about having a clear plan, clear objectives? What is your own organisation's organisational strategy and what is the purpose of it? Is it about making sure that everyone knows how we are going to get there? Is it the technical, the logistical, the tactical? And what impact does that have on the success of an organisation versus one with no strategy? So write some narrative about what you believe that impact an organisational strategy has on an organisation. Lots for you to consider there. We'll now move on to the next question. We're now looking to the role of the manager. And the next question asks, summarise the role of the manager. Here we are looking for you to summarise the role of the manager within your organisation. You should consider their operational responsibilities as well as their people responsibilities. So what are we asking you to do? We're asking you to choose a manager in your own organisation. This could be your manager or it could be a colleague. We definitely want you to contextualise your answer here. This is not about writing their job description, but it is about looking at their operational responsibilities and their people responsibilities. Operational being get the job done. And people responsibilities, that's about the people motivating, looking after the people so the job will get done. What skills and behaviours do they display? Is it all just about the management, just about getting the task done? Or do they display those leadership qualities that motivate the team, motivate the people, lead the team? Lots of things for you to consider there. Let's move on to the next question. The next question, explain the role of the manager in communicating organisational strategy to individuals and teams. So this is about communication. Here you should explain the part managers play in making sure everyone is aware of the organisational strategy and their part in it. How is this done in your team / organisation? So is this about feedback? Is it about effective communication? Is it just communicating from top down? Or is it about two-way feedback? Do your team know why they are being asked to do something? How does it link back to the organisational strategy? How do you communicate the organisational strategy to your own team? Maybe there's only one part of the strategy that is important to your own team. So maybe you only need to communicate one part of it. How do you do this? Is it in the form of team meetings, one-to-ones, webinars, the intranet? Lots for you to consider there. We'll now move on to the next question. Explain levels of accountability and authority in the management role. This will likely be very certain to your role and should cover the upper and lower limits of authority. For example, are they accountable for achievement of KPIs, recruitment and management of staff, dealing with customer complaints, etc.? Please consider this in the context of your role or a role you know well. So what are we asking for here? Well, this is all about those upper and lower limits. It's about what you should be doing and then what you need to be referring on. It's all about what you're authorised to do, but what you're accountable for. You may be authorised to agree holiday requests, for instance, but you are also accountable for getting the job done. Look to your own organisational chart. Where do you feature in this? What are the people above you, below you, authorised to do? What are they accountable for? A shift leader, for example, well, their job is to get their team through the shift. But somebody above them or offshoot of them, well, their job may be about the people development within that team. Lots for you to consider there. For that answer, we'll now move on to the next question. The next question asks, outline the legal and organisational frameworks which apply to the management role. One of the most challenging things when becoming a manager is all the different legalities and governance requirements you become responsible for. Outline the 3 most relevant in your role. For example, as a manager, you are not just responsible for your own health and safety. You will likely assume responsibility for your team and possibly even for customers and visitors as well. So this is another question where we've got 3 boxes to pop your answers in. So you need to choose 3 legal and organisational frameworks. So what could they be, for instance? They could be health and safety, possibly, or maybe GDPR, or perhaps HR compliance. What other things could there be? Absence management, for instance, or equality management, employer's liability. For some of you, maybe those of you who work in the NHS, for example, well, they'll be very specific to your organisation. And what is your role as a manager to ensure that these are adhered to? And what would be the impact if they weren't adhered to? Lots of things for you to consider there. We will now move on to the next question. The next question asks, explain the differences between management and leadership. Use the activities completed in the classroom to support this question and consider how this sits in your own role. As it says here, you will have covered this in your workshop. You will have looked at management and leadership. You will have seen that and discussed that management is very much about the doing and leadership is about the beyond. Management is about getting the job done. Sometimes it has to be micromanagement. But leadership is about the inspiration, the inspiring of the team. There's a very good quote by Stephen Covey. Research it. He talked about how management is about climbing the ladder of success, and leadership is making sure that that ladder is leaning against the right wall. It is said that to be a great leader, you might not have good management qualities, but to be a good manager, you will likely be a good leader. Do you have to be in a management role to display leadership qualities? Have a think about that one. And this is definitely about management and leadership. not manager and leader. Lots for you to consider there. We will now move on to the next question. The next question is a two-part question, and the first part asks you to summarize recognized management and leadership approaches. And the second part, explain how management and leadership approaches can be applied and adapted in different work-based situations. For this question, you will need to review the leadership theories we discussed in the classroom and summarize how each can be applied in different situations. You may like to consider certain examples from your own experience. For example, in an emergency situation, you would likely adapt an autocratic or directive style, as action needs to be taken quickly. What are we asking from you here? In this column, in these three boxes, this is where you will need to put in your leadership styles, your recognized theories. You will have discussed some of these in the workshop, for instance. Maybe A to E of leadership, or X and Y. What about situational leadership? Or even action-centered leadership style? Pop the leadership style in each of these boxes. One leadership style in each box. Put the name of the person who came up with the theory, and then write a little summary about the leadership style, management and leadership style, or management and leadership approach. Over here, we're now looking for an explanation of how that style can be applied and adapted to different work-based situations. So when have you seen this style in action? This is your chance to break the style down. There may be different styles within the theory. So when would you use one part of it at one time and another part of it another time? How would you apply these and adapt them to different work-based situations? Have you seen them in action by a colleague or your own manager? You can put in here the leadership styles that were covered in the workshop, or why not research your own? But they must be recognized models only, recognized theories only. Lots for you to consider there. Let's move on to the next question. The next question asks, explain the knowledge and skills required to be an effective manager. Knowledge and skills. Well, we know that knowledge is about what you know, and skills about what you can learn, and how you can then embed the knowledge back into the team, gaining those skills. So it asks here, for this section, consider the different skills and knowledge required to be an effective manager. This should be a mix of technical skills and soft people skills. We have started you off with emotional intelligence, coaching, and then we need you to find a few more. These could range from anything from problem solving to active listening, for instance, or time management, communication, inspiring. How about organizational? And then over here, we're looking for an explanation for each of these. What does emotional intelligence mean? Look at it from the point of view of your own role as a manager. What sort of emotional intelligence would your team be looking for you to have? How do you react to those certain situations? Coaching. What does coaching mean? And what is the impact of coaching your team? Or the impact of not coaching your team? And then carry on explaining about your choices that you've chosen over here. But the most important thing is to get a fine balance between the technical skills and the people skills. Lots for you to consider there. So we'll now move on to the next question. And the next question asks, summarize the behaviours required to be an effective manager. Please consider each of these below and how they might look in practice within your role within your organisation. Perhaps you can consider some examples of when these behaviours have or have not been demonstrated by you and the impact of this. So we've given you the 4 behaviours that we would like you now to give a summary of. And we definitely want you to contextualise your answer with your own role within your own organisation. So what do you think taking responsibility actually means? How does it work in practice? What is the impact? Is it just about making decisions? Or is it about stopping the mistakes from happening again? Learning from them. Mistakes do happen. But is taking responsibility mean that, well, learning from them and putting an action plan in place to make sure that that mistake doesn't happen again? And what does inclusivity mean? Is that just about including everyone? Is it making sure that everyone is involved, not favouritism within the team? Is it about making sure that you communicate the message to everyone? And what does agility actually mean? Is it about thinking on your feet as a manager? Understanding quickly, making those decisions quickly, being proactive or reactive? And what does professionalism mean? Professionalism is very subjective, that has to be said. But, some things are quite clear. You can't ask your own team to be on time if you're not on time. Is it about that body language that you display? What about managing in accordance with policies? Leading by example? And what does remaining professional at all times actually mean? Is it about listening or setting the scene? Setting a good example? Lots for you to consider there. And contextualise your answer. Always do that. Always show the CMI that you're applying your learning back into the workplace. So the next question is, explain the impact, knowledge, skills and behaviours on the team, colleagues and customers. For each of these groups, you should consider the impact of a great manager versus that of a poor manager. The groups are down here: teams, colleagues and customers. Now with customers, remember this just isn't external customers, this is internal customers as well. So you've got customers, service users, internal customers, for instance, an HR department. Well, their customers would be the staff, for instance. So what does the impact of knowledge, skills and behaviours have on the teams? Well, I would say that a great manager will produce a high-performing team. They'd be inspirational. And yes, a bad manager, well, that would be the opposite of that. But what damage would that have? How would that ripple through the organisation? What about the colleagues and peers? What effect would a great manager have by displaying those knowledge, skills and behaviours as opposed to a bad manager? And again, with customers, does that affect the culture? What sort of culture would come from having a great manager displaying great knowledge, skills and behaviours as opposed to a bad manager? We all know that behaviour breeds behaviour. We think of that as bad behaviour, but it can be good behaviour as well. Leading by example from the top down. And then it ripples through. So the key thing here is comparing and contrasting. The impact of knowledge, skills and behaviours on the team, colleagues and customers. The impact of a great manager versus that of a poor manager. Lots for you to consider there. Right, we'll move on now to the end of the assessment book. So you'll have completed all the questions by now, and that's for your diploma. And then at the end of the assessment book here, you now need to complete the evidence tasks. And this is for the apprenticeship standard. And by doing these evidence tasks, you also will carry out around 12 hours of off-the-job learning. These are your post-workshop activities. And this is your chance to get creative. And we also need to see the evidence. So identify the purpose and values of your organisation. What are the organisational strategies and what role do you play in the achievement of these? You will already have covered this in your assessment, but now is the time to actually gather the evidence and upload it to Quals Direct. The next question, produce evidence of the different ways that the strategy is communicated to your team members. This could be in the form of meeting minutes, one-to-ones, memos, emails, etc. So what have you been focusing on recently? And how does this all relate to what you actually do within your team? Find that evidence and upload it. We don't want to see anything that is confidential, so do cross that all through, but we do need to see the evidence. And then complete an organisational chart, including your job role and description, clearly stating what you are accountable for and have authority for. Also include your team members within the organisational chart. Now, when we say team members, we don't need to see any names, just what they do. Now, this is really just for your own team, stroke department. You don't need to look to the whole organisation, especially if you work somewhere like the NHS. All right, so it's just your own team and department here. Now, the best habit to get into is to complete these tasks with your assessment book, because you will already have been researching this for the assessment. So now is the chance to gather that evidence and upload it at the same time as you do your assignment. It's a very good habit to get into. It means that once you've all uploaded everything, the assignment is done. And we can then map that into your portfolio. This is about also putting everything into context, all your learning, all the theory into context of your own role within your own organisation. It's your chance to go and talk to people, talk to your manager, talk to your team, find out stuff, look at the website. All right, okay. So that's it now. We've completed the assessment book for Introduction to Leadership. I hope you found that useful. As I said at the beginning, I'm a member of the assessment team here at Lighthouse. For some of you, I may be your primary assessor, but we do have a full team of assessors. So if you have any questions at all, you can contact me or my fellow colleagues just by phoning the office and asking for a member of the assessment team. I wish you luck, and we look forward to receiving your assignments to mark. Thank you very much for listening to this, and I look forward to receiving your work. Thank you very much.